people of the world, people of Christmas season, holiday season. How do we say it so we don't offend people? Doesn't matter how you open your mouth, someone's going to be pissed off. Well, we're not here to piss you off. This episode is a continuation of the Grief Survival Guide, and I've been trying to get coordinated with this gentleman a couple times, and I'm excited that he's here to talk. He is basically, I consider him a health guru. I have most of the Instagram pictures I have saved. You know how you can do those like little sections where you create your own little tile of all the different things on Instagram are all of his account, all of the posts from his accounts and ways I should eat and not eat, and also helping me feel not so shitty about the choices I make and realizing that a lot of the information is misinformation. So here to clarify a lot and also talk about his own struggles and talk about, loss and love and trying to live a healthier life. Author of The Genius Foods, author of The Genius Life, and just an all-around really genius dude. Please give it up for Max Lugavere.
Oh, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Did I say your last name right? It sounds like a Disney villain.
You said it with a European flair, which I appreciate. It makes me sound exotic, which, I can get on board with. It's actually Lugavere, like beer, but Lugavere, I'll take it.
I'm going to go Lugavere. I feel like you have all the stature to maintain a Lugavere name, so we're going to go with that.
People will assume that I'm more interesting than I actually am, so I'll roll with it.
Have you always been are you a nerd? Because I'm a nerd, and I feel like you're kind of a nerd.
Yeah, growing up, I was a nerd, hardcore. I was never an athlete. I was a computer programmer, self-taught, and gamer. And then when I discovered fitness and exercise and things like that, my brain just latched onto it. Because I saw it as a way to transcend my shy, introverted, low confidence self back in high school. And I became kind of obsessed. Yeah. And that carried me through, most of my early adolescent years. And a couple of years ago, which I'm sure we're going to get into, I found a way, for better or worse, to kind of work it into what I do professionally, talking about health and nutrition and fitness. But yeah, it all kind of stems from the fact that I am a big nerd, basically.
Yeah, it's interesting because I found you because of my own individual relationship with dementia and Alzheimer's, and I follow a lot of healthy things because of that. I, being the nerd that I am, love to dig into information and improve and figure out a problem and try and solve it. So with everything with my father, that's how I found you. It's because, why waste any time? Let's just go right into our connection, because you posted a video that just went straight to my soul. I think it was a couple years ago, of you and your mom dancing.
Oh God, yeah.
Do you remember that video you posted?
Is that how you found me?
That's how I found you.
Wow.
After my father passed, well, during the time, because I'm sure, we can get into it, but with dementia, I talk a lot about mental health and Alzheimer's on this podcast. It's not a very short process. It's a lengthy thing. So you sort of have time to deal with stuff and learn things. So in that process of my father being sick, I was just reading books and trying to find ways to get ahead of this and learn. And that's how I came to find you, is because Instagram, although, you have your Fit T models portion of it, there's also great information. And that post from your mom, I was like, oh my God, this is like, I can feel this because I'm experiencing it. And then I just went through all of your information. I was like, oh, this dude knows what the fuck he's talking about. And you found health and fitness prior to your mother becoming sick, correct?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, so I was from high school. I had developed a passion for nutrition, for health, for fitness, and as I had gotten older, what was initially sort of mostly centered around how to look and feel better and be stronger, kind of broadened, the lens sort of widened out to include longevity and overall sort of anti-aging methodologies. And then when my mother got sick it was about 2011, that's when everything basically kind of focused, squarely on trying to understand to the best of my ability why this would have happened to a woman at the age at which it did. So my mom was about 58 years old when she first started to exhibit those early symptoms of dementia.
Which is
And
pretty much considered early onset.
yeah, although she didn't have Alzheimer's disease, she had a form of dementia. So for people that don't know, dementia is a sort of category term. It's an umbrella term that includes, of course, Alzheimer's disease, which is the most common form of dementia. It affects about 5 million people currently in the U.S. alone. But underneath that umbrella, you've got vascular dementia, you've got frontotemporal dementia, you've got Lewy body dementia, you've got Parkinson's disease dementia. So there's all these different variants of dementia, and even
just
within
a bag of fun for everybody.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Pick your dementia. You get dementia. You get dementia.
Yeah.
So much.
It's terrible. I mean, it's really the worst, as you know. My mom had a condition called Lewy body dementia, which is actually like having Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease at the same time. It's actually what it was revealed Robin Williams had just prior to his killing himself, which was, so heartbreaking. And so my mom had that for many years. And that video that you saw, I mean, if you could consider like an even more tragic twist to the story, my mom over Labor Day of 2018 was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer on top of the dementia. And that video was me and her dancing to one of her favorite songs in her living room, and she was dying at that point. That was after the diagnosis, and she had about they projected a 3 to 6 month window of time that she had left, and yeah, it was the most difficult period of my life by a long shot. Like, it was just so tragic and traumatic and awful, to see, the person that you love most in the world declining in such a rapid way, in such a relentless,
unstoppable
and unforgiving, and just, it's just it's terrible. So that was a video that was just like a slice of a moment that I had with my mom. And the irony is that, and I'm sure you know this, as well, that like each of those little moments, whether it's a 2-second long, flash moment or a period of an hour or 2 or 3, they're all so meaningful, and like, even if it's like a nanosecond of a moment, even if it's like the way that your loved one looks at you, you'll remember that for the rest of your life.
You really will. I don't know about you, but I'm a very joyful person. I wake up happy. I tend to not go too deep or too dark. I certainly have my moments, but I'm blessed in that I have a very positive outlook. But experiencing this disease and having gone through it with my dad, it brought out such darkness in me and anger that I didn't know that I had. Did you experience any of that?
Frustration, anger, guilt, like wondering whether there was more that I could do, whether I did everything that I could.
What were some of the more beautiful moments? I also try to find the miracles, because you really, as hard as things get, once it comes to some practice, you do have a choice. You have a choice to focus on the grievance or the miracle in the moment. What were some of the miracles going through those hard times with your mom that you remember?
I mean, just I remember, there are so many of these little moments, but I mean, one example. So I have some friends that run a podcast called Mind Pump, and they're like, it's a fitness podcast, and I'm friends with them. And, these guys, they're all like bodybuilders and stuff, but they're the sweetest guys that I know in the space. They're like my go-to, fitness dudes. And we have such an incredible bond, me and the Mind Pump guys. And I remember that they were planning some kind of event during that time, and I couldn't make it, obviously. I was going to go, and then my mom, there was that diagnosis, and I just realized that like there was no way that I was going to be able to go to that. And so they were so kind and sweet that they asked me, what it was that my mom really loved, like, in life. And one of the things that my mom loved more than anything else was music, specifically like 60s artists, like, the Rolling Stones, The Who, and things like that. And so the Mind Pump guys bought this book, this, like, coffee table book of like rock and roll photography from the 60s. And they sent it to me in New York to show to my mom. And I just remember showing her the book and flipping through the pages with her. And she just lit up, she was so, uh, there was so much joy just, emanating from her face. Her quality of life at that point had become so diminished.
How are you able to, for both of us, you being an author and a speaker and a health aficionado and running a successful Instagram page and all of that, that takes a lot of work. And when you're going through something like that, where you're basically grieving somebody while they're still alive, were you able to work? Did you have to take time off? Did it motivate you more? How did the grief of losing your mother affect your ability or inability to work?
Such a good question. I yeah, I definitely took time for myself. I remember prioritizing not time to work necessarily, but to practice self-care. That was a really important part of the equation for me. Um, like, I remember distinctly, if I didn't, like, in those moments, you want to spend every waking second with
Yes.
your loved one, right? But you can't. And so I remember deliberately carving out time every day to get to the gym and to work out. And people might think that's trite, like, you have your whole life to go to the gym and work out. But for me, if I didn't take the time to go and expunge the anxiety and the frustration and the anger and the sadness that I was feeling, I wouldn't have made it through to the other side. I mean, exercise was so important to me. I mean, it always generally is, but especially during that time, I would have gone insane. I mean, there was so much stress, I mean, it's like, yeah, the stress of, like, obviously what you're going through is a very stressful period. But then on top of that, what people don't realize is that caregivers and family members, there's all kinds of other stress. It's
the amount of stress you don't even plan on showing up, and also managing other people's grief becoming heavy and also not your job. There's so much that comes up in those moments.
Yeah, there's infighting within I mean, I don't know if you have, like, what your situation was, what the living situation was with you and your mom, but, like, me and my two younger brothers and my mom's partner at the time, we were, like, at each other's throats all the time. Like, I mean, me and my brothers we were there for one another. We were going through it together, but, there's all this, like, end of life stuff that needs this, like, bureaucratic bullshit that needs to be wrapped up and taken care of. And, all of that is just so, I mean, it's frustrating in normal life, and it becomes exponentially more so when you're dealing with the sickness of a loved one.
You there?
Yeah.
Okay. We're still here. Me and my brothers. You're at me and my brothers.
Yeah, so me and my brothers, we were there for one another, and we were the support network for one another. But at the end of life, you have all of this, like, bureaucratic, awful stuff that you need to sort of wrap up, and that's it's a hellish process dealing with that kind of stuff in normal life. You throw the sickness of a loved one on top of that, and it becomes exponentially more so.
It makes you, the way people deal with facing any sort of end of life, you can't plan on that. It does bring up emotions that you can't anticipate. I have 3 other sisters. I'm the youngest of 3. So it changed our dynamic completely. And it also, really isolated people's own experience with our dad. Like, I had a amazing childhood. He was always around, but my older sisters are from another marriage, so they had a different connection. So their grief was a little bit more traumatizing, I think, because they couldn't make up for lost time. They were facing losing somebody who maybe they, when you sort of hold grudges and you get older and you are mad at your parents for not being there, and then when you're faced losing them. That's why I talk a lot on this podcast about everyone's individual experiences with their family and whatever their relationships are. Not that I'm trying to overlook any sort of trauma that someone might have experienced from their parents and in their childhood, but some of those you kind of have to just sweep away and really focus on the moment and try and be present and realize that shit happens in the past. But if you allow it to muddy the waters of dealing with the current situation, you're really doing a disservice to your own healing and your own ability to show up in your life beyond whatever's going to happen next once they're gone.
Yeah.
Was your mom a good mom?
My mom was the best mom. Yeah. I mean, my mom, I wouldn't be doing what it is I'm currently doing if in some way growing up, those seeds weren't initially planted, to do something that was of service to the greater public, that was, that had, built into it, empathy and compassion, and all that is built into what it is that I do. I mean, I'm grateful in that I get to do it for a living, like that's the dream. But at the end of the day, everything that I do is really about helping people get healthier and to make sense of nutrition and all the sort of messaging about fitness and, whatever it is, happens to be. And so I credit my mom for that, the fact that my mom was the kindest person that I knew and valued more than anything courage and honesty. And these are all values that I put into everything that I do. And she's the reason for that. I mean, I think part of growing up is realizing that your parents are not gods, they're not, that they are imperfect. And so my mom was not perfect.
They're just dudes and chicks. They're just dudes and chicks.
Yeah, exactly. That's all they are. And, they get knocked up at some point. They knock each other up.
They get knocked up and then they're like, fuck.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the test, that's the test. Like my mom and dad did, they fought like crazy. My mom exposed me to things that about the marriage and, probably was a little too emotionally codependent on me. In many ways.
Were your parents together when your mother was sick and in her passing?
No, they got divorced when I was 18. They fought my entire childhood, and
wow. Are we from the same family?
Maybe. Maybe. I mean, it was a shit show, but but they stayed together because they loved their children, me and my younger brothers, and they had a business together. So they stayed together for the business.
What kind of business did they have?
My mom and my dad, they were clothing manufacturers in New York City. So they were
that's so cool.
Yeah, they were like second or third generation New York City Jews. And so they did what most Jews industrious Jews did. Well, rather than become doctors or lawyers or whatever, they went into the garment center, which in New York, it's been referred to as the schmata business, And so they got into that and they came from nothing. They were poor, AF growing up and they had this like entrepreneurial drive and my mom had a thing for fashion and they created this women's clothing the sportswear company, and they ran that for 20 years together. That's
hard. Doing that in New York, that's a hard business to get into, especially like as a couple. So you come from an entrepreneurial spirit. It's a hard word to say. Entrepreneurial. Am I saying it wrong? I mean, I've already started with your name wrong, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Sounds right to me. Sounds right to me. I mean, I'm not the arbiter of proper pronunciation by any means, but I think you're doing a pretty good job.
Thank you. I need your support. I need your support and motivation.
It's tough. Entrepreneurship is hard. I mean, that's what like any artist today, like you're an entrepreneur. I've had to become an entrepreneur. I would not make it in any corporate job. I just would get fired.
Oh my gosh. I would get fired. I've gotten fired. So I'm like, cool. This is like, thank you. Thank you so much. You mean I don't have to listen to you tell me how to do things which are wrong, by the way?
Yeah.
all the way you do something is wrong. That's why I would never survive in corporate America. I'm too headstrong and I have my own way of wanting to do things.
Now you just get told how much you suck by thousands of Instagram commenters. That's what we've traded
By
it
people
for,
who
right?
sit at home, I love you all, but some of you are real pieces of shit, okay? Some of you are real pieces of shit, and I don't hold it against you because it's a vicious cycle. Sometimes you're raised by a piece of shit and you become a piece of shit, okay? Max and I are not here to judge you. We were raised by really great people.
It's called, you got to eat crow at some point in your life, whether it's through like your singular asshole boss or from thousands of vitriolic YouTube or Instagram commenters, and
Good word.
we've chosen the latter. So.
We have, speaking of, you're talking a little bit about the food and like your health and all of that. I want to, before we go, I'm going to get some of your advice for people listening about grief and things like that. But I do want to jump into our food and our nutritional, basically, like, what are some of the nutritional lies that we've been fed as a society that you see keep coming up?
Oh man, there's so many.
There's so many.
There's so many. Well, the notion that you need to eat, 6 meals throughout the day to stoke your metabolic fire, I think that's, this idea that you're supposed to be eating around the clock. I think that's been to the detriment in many ways of public health. There's no need for breakfast, and in fact, earlier dinners.
Shit, Max.
Yeah,
shit.
Yeah.
No need for breakfast.
There's no real need. I mean, consistency is to some degree important. But yeah, I mean, there's no necessity for like waking up and having that bowl of cereal or whatever it happens to be, the glass of orange juice as soon as you wake up. There's really there's no need for
orange juice. Like, what, you might as well just suck on a sugar lick, like some sort of Clydesdale.
Exactly.
It's just a glass of sugar.
Just a glass of sugar. More sugar in actuality than most soft drinks.
It is alarming. I'm kind of excited about this idea that breakfast isn't necessary, because if and when after COVID we do get back to a normal life and there is some frolicking, then that would give me an excuse just to kick the guy out the next morning, or for me to leave. Like, there's no breakfast, I have to go. I can't stay here. There's nothing for me here. There's no waffles, so bye. See ya.
Yeah. There's no, I mean, whatever works.
Sorry, Max. Did I make you blush? I apologize. Let's stay on course.
Look, whatever you got to do, you got to use what you got to get what you need in life.
Yes, exactly. So we don't need breakfast necessarily. Maybe we're eating too much.
I would say what's become somewhat disordered is this notion that we're supposed to be eating around the clock. So there's this burgeoning field of research called circadian biology that suggests that humans are really meant to eat during the day. We're diurnal creatures, and that compressing our feeding window within a span of time, whether it's 8 hours, 10 hours, or 12 hours, as opposed to the 16 hours that most people are eating, throughout the day, from the moment they wake up until the minute they go to bed, they're metabolizing food. That by practicing what is being referred to as time-restricted eating, that there are some pretty significant metabolic benefits to be gained, whether it's an improved management of blood sugar in the body or an improvement in blood pressure. It seems to be the case that by compressing your eating window and spending more time in a fasted state has benefits, and they're not necessarily benefits to your weight. The research on time-restricted feeding, and it's not like a magic bullet for weight loss necessarily,
Right.
but it seems to be beneficial from a metabolic health standpoint, which is important. And also statistically, we know from research that only about 12% of the U.S. population would qualify as having good metabolic health.
Damn.
And so yeah.
Is that because a majority of us have like high blood pressure and diabetes and like all sorts of heart problems? Probably due to our nutrition, right?
Yeah, and in no small part due to our nutrition. But it's metabolic health is basically if you have good metabolic health, it's basically a term that represents a constellation of features that you want to see in somebody who's healthy. So not a lot of visceral fat. You want to have a healthy, normal blood pressure. You want to have blood sugar that's in a normal, relatively low range. You want to have a lipo a lipid profile in your blood that's healthy. So, triglyceride levels that aren't very high, or, LDL that isn't very high, and HDL that, perhaps is somewhat higher. So these are all sort of like it's a constellation of signs that a physician, and I'm not a physician, but it's a constellation of biomarkers that a physician would use to assess whether or not you are, quote unquote, metabolically healthy or trending towards metabolic syndrome or prediabetes or type 2 diabetes.
Which sometimes, like, people can look healthy and they think that they're healthy. Like, I have a friend who's slim and fit and all these things, and it turns out he was like pre-diabetic and he had no idea. And it's I think that the further we go along in life, especially now in this society where there's so much access to information, it is hard to delineate between what is truth and what is something that's a little bit, based off of someone who says something who doesn't know anything. It's so hard to sift through everything. For someone like me, I don't do dieting. I try to sort of implement, like what you're saying. It's like an amalgamation of things that you put into your life to sort of resemble some health, exercising. And for me, I realized the value of sleep through this whole process of learning a lot about mental health and things with illnesses like Alzheimer's. Like, the value of sleep is something that, to me, I remember this one time my agent said, if you have to sleep less to get the work done, you should. And that's so many people's mindset. Like, no sleep till Brooklyn. I when everyone else is asleep and I'm awake, I'm on the hustle. You can't hustle if you're exhausted.
No.
What's some of the science behind sleep that you found, maybe that you didn't know before, that you were shocked about?
Well, so sleep, it's a good question. When talking about metabolic health, first of all, metabolic health has come up a lot these days because it really seems to be one of the major determining factors about COVID morbidity and mortality.
Right.
So, one of the reasons why we're seeing, like, so much hospitalization is because, by and large, we live in a sick society. People have poor metabolic health, and that's one of the key, it seems, determining factors that will determine whether or not COVID takes you down or is experienced more like a flu.
Right.
And it's just sad, that so many of us are struggling with our health. But one of the reasons for that is that so many of us are underslept, and sleep serves as a sort of master metabolic regulator. It basically, every night when you sleep, it's like it presses the reset button on myriad hormones in your body, from insulin to leptin to ghrelin. These are hormones that
ghrelin. That sounds like a gremlin. That sounds like a creature.
It sounds like a gremlin. It does. Yeah, ghrelin is.
That's a good thing.
Well, it's an important hormone, and it basically guides how satiated you feel. So when your stomach is empty, the hormone ghrelin is secreted, and it makes you hungry. So it drives.
I feel like I got ghrelin every day, Max. I have to be honest. Like, I feel insatiable. I don't know if it's because I'm currently in a grieving process, that maybe I'm trying to eat my emotions, but nothing is filling the gut void, brother.
Yeah, we tend to reach for comfort foods when we're stressed out. And that's okay. Whatever you got to do to make it through, that's important. But yeah, so sleep, on just one night of poor sleep, you're basically pre-diabetic the next day. This is temporary.
Damn.
Yeah, on just one night of shortened sleep. And then when it comes to the brain, Alzheimer's disease, we now know that when you're sleeping, the brain actually cleanses itself of proteins that we know can aggregate and serve as the backbone for plaques that we associate with Alzheimer's disease. On one night of short sleep, aside from the metabolic disturbance that you'll see in somebody, you actually see a pretty stark increase in amyloid beta and cerebrospinal fluid, as well as tau. So amyloid beta and tau are the two proteins that are most closely linked with Alzheimer's disease. Yeah, they gunk up the brain. And so when you're sleeping, your brain is actually flushing these toxic proteins out. And that's why we believe that one of the reasons why we believe that sleep is so important when it comes to the prevention of conditions like Alzheimer's disease.
It's definitely one thing that I'm sure people listening, if you don't get good sleep, you wake up and you are a demon. I like if I don't get I just that's the one thing that I have adjusted through this whole process is to really value I can show up better if I've slept well and got whatever I need, like 8 hours. What's your number? What's your sleep number?
I'm with you. I'm like an 8 hour person. I like some people claim that they can get by on reduced sleep, 6 hours. I'm like, no, thank you.
No,
I go to
thank
bed.
you. 6 hours for the birds.
Yeah, exactly. No,
Exactly.
yeah, exactly. No, I definitely, I thrive on good sleep. It's super important.
I
Super
had
important.
a debate with my sister recently about, and I've had this debate with other people about the availability of healthy food and it sort of playing a role in a systemic issue where people who live in bad neighborhoods, low income neighborhoods, they don't tend to have the greatest restaurants. This is just from my own personal experience. I've lived in, many neighborhoods that were dangerous and low income on my way up when I was living in New York City. I did the broke girl circle all around Manhattan, and there's just the KFCs and the McDonald's and all the drive-throughs and all those fast foods. And to me, I find they tend to be in these lower income areas, and that type of person seems to suffer a lot with illnesses and disease and all of that. Do you think there's any correlation between the environment you live and your ability to eat healthy, or is this something that people should just know to do?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's a very important question. And yeah, you're right. I mean, these junk food manufacturers and fast food companies, they all practice predatory marketing, and they aim specifically for these like low income people, which tend to be people of color, minorities, marginalized communities.
Yep.
And it's super problematic. I mean, I see. I think that one of the major barriers is truly education.
Yes.
We all have access to the internet these days. We have access to a TV, and I think at the end of the day, people need to like good information can really change the way that a person operates. Knowledge is power, and even in low income areas, I think it's possible to eat healthily. You just have to know how to do it. I think, when it comes to buying things like orange juice, which we talked about earlier, or sodas, sugar sweetened beverages, which are a major, like linchpin in the obesity epidemic. For many people, I think it's just knowing to avoid those things, and to save your money that you would otherwise spend on those things and put it towards higher quality food. We also live in a time where, thanks to the internet, we have all kinds of like shipping services right now, whether it's, Amazon, or these smaller companies now that have like subscription, they'll send the highest quality meat possible to you, no matter
Right.
where in the country you happen to be. So, I mean, we live in an amazing time where I think access is becoming like less of an issue, but we still need to penetrate those areas with knowledge and information. And that's where, I'm so grateful when I get to come onto various podcasts like yours, that are reaching people that aren't necessarily tapped into the nutrition sphere on social media.
Right.
So it's a way to sort of
Which
like
is
Trojan.
huge.
Yeah,
It's there. If you
it
guys
is
want to
huge.
start somewhere, start with Max's page and then go from there. Just trust me on this one, because you also like the one thing that I love seeing when you post, like, don't feel guilty about eating, fat, meat, salt, the list
Yeah.
of things that you've been told to avoid. You have a very healthy outlook on people's idea of how they should limit what they're eating, but you made me think of something that I remember. Speaking of education, can you educate me on, there's a word, glutathione?
Glutathione.
Yeah, what the
Glutathione.
according to you and things I've read, it's like gangster. What is it?
It's pretty gangster. It's the body's master antioxidant and detoxifier,
Okay.
and that we produce. We produce it in our liver. We produce it, all around the body. And it's basically an antioxidant. So people take, they're familiar with antioxidant vitamins like vitamin C and things like that. But it's the most powerful antioxidant that your own body makes. We also eat it to some degree in food, like they've found glutathione in pretty high concentration in certain mushrooms. But
Ooh.
yeah, like porcini
Like
mushrooms.
shrooms,
Right?
like going out into the woods and kind of like seeing Jesus type of shrooms, or like
I
shiitake?
don't know. I don't know about those kinds of shrooms, although those provide other value, certainly. But yeah, the porcini, the portobello. There are also quote unquote medicinal mushrooms like lion's mane and cordyceps. I'm a big mushroom fan. So it
I
turns
am
out that
too.
yeah, they're great. Um, but yeah, so glutathione is like it's an antioxidant that your body basically produces to get rid of nasty, potentially harmful environmental toxins, and even to neutralize toxins, like that your body own makes that your own body makes in order to fend off various predators and or potentially harmful toxins and things like that. Uh,
Did you see that article that I sent to you? I think it was NPR, where some researchers based in like the dementia Alzheimer's area have the belief that maybe it is caused by like toxins and infectious diseases, like something like a herpes. There's
yeah,
speculation that the beta and the tau tangles are a result of reacting to the infection on the body. Have you come across any information on that yourself?
yes. So
What's your thoughts on that?
one of the main researchers who actually identified that phenomena is Rudy Tanzi, and he's up at Harvard, and I've had him on my podcast, The Genius Life, and I think that so basically what they found is that amyloid seems to help, or at least be attempting to neutralize foreign emitters in the brain. So the
Right.
herpes virus is one of them. What they found is that when herpes appears in the brain, it tends to be encapsulated by amyloid, which is this the plaque that we've known for almost a century at this point, aggregates and forms these these visible plaques in the brain around neurons in patients with Alzheimer's disease. But actually, amyloid isn't exclusive to Alzheimer's patients. We all generate it in our brains. We all, by the time we're older, generally there's some degree of plaque accumulation. There's also plaque that forms in, other neurodegenerative conditions. But the idea here is that amyloid is not necessarily a bad guy. It's there at the scene of the crime, and it probably is serving some evolutionarily important purpose,
Right.
to serve, in some way as a sort of immune function in the brain.
Yeah, amyloid's
Um,
like, bitch, don't come up in here and try and
yeah,
fuck up my house.
yeah.
Amyloid's like me when people come over, like, take your shoes off at the door. Don't let your dog up on my furniture and stop messing my shit up.
From now on, I'm going to have your voice now as like the voice of amyloid in
Please.
my brain. So thank you for that, Jess. Um,
She's gangster. Amyloid is so gangster. Glutathione.
Glutathione and amyloid. Yeah, they're just
Yeah, we
like
need to do like an animated series about all these little things and we can voice them. You have an amazing voice. You could definitely be glutathione, like a superhero. You're like the
thanks so much.
superhero. Yeah.
Yeah. Just before
What?
hopping on here, I had a voice lesson actually, so my voice is all like,
Oh, you could
uh,
totally. I could see you being like a Disney prince or a villain. Either one. You teeter on the
wow.
line.
Thanks so much for that. I think. Um,
I want you to be a villain. I don't know why I want you to go. I think because it's like a dichotomy to your teaching and what you represent. I think it would be a fun little,
I'm down.
exercise for you.
Hopefully,
I've
you've got
heard
some
you.
casting agents listening to this. I'm
Yes.
down.
All my agents at CAA, please sign him up for the next animated series.
Yes.
I heard you say our genes load the gun while our choices pull the trigger.
Hmm.
Tell me about that. What does that mean?
So there are very few conditions that people have that are actually determined by your genes. At the population scale, a very small, fewer than 10% of illnesses that we're seeing today are genetically determined by what are called deterministic genes. When it comes to conditions like cancer, Alzheimer's disease, heart disease, there's an influence that our environment has. with our genes, with genetic risk factors that then determine whether or not we will develop this condition, whatever it happens to be. So Alzheimer's disease is the one that I'm the most well-versed in, because that's the condition that I've, studied for the past, almost decade of my life. When it comes to Alzheimer's disease, there are many genes that influence, one's risk. The most well-defined of them is the APOE4 allele that about 1 in 4 of us carry, 1 in 4, 1 in 5 of us carry. And that can influence your risk anywhere between 2 and 14-fold. Your relative risk. Now, again, this is not a deterministic gene. So if you are a carrier of one copy of the Alzheimer's risk gene, the APOE4 allele, like I am, you have an elevated risk compared to somebody who might not carry it.
Right.
But that in no way is a sentence to go on and develop Alzheimer's disease. It's really ultimately about, your choices. And I think that if you are genetically at risk, then it becomes all the more valuable for you to live a diet or live a lifestyle and consume a diet that's in accordance with what we know about, risk reduction, or, what some people have termed prevention, which I'm happy to use that term.
Which may be difficult around this time of year.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and also prevention is not something. It wasn't, doctors and scientists didn't believe that Alzheimer's was a potentially preventable condition up until very, very recently. I mean, only in, I believe, 2017 or 2018 that the Alzheimer's Association, which is sort of the largest and most well-known funding pipeline for pharmaceutical research, acknowledged that you can actually have an influence over your risk. So it's a very sort of new topic.
It is a very new topic.
Yeah, but only about 2 to 3% of Alzheimer's cases are
Genealogical.
So early onset familial Alzheimer's disease. If you saw the movie Still Alice, yeah.
Oh God, it broke my heart.
Of course. Well, that's what she had.
Still Alice is so good. Still Alice is such a good depiction. There's been a few movies that have tried to capture, and it's such a difficult disease to capture. But yeah, Still Alice was definitely one of those. Who? Renee Russo?
That was Julianne Moore.
Julianne Moore. I always get those two confused. Amazing performance.
Yeah, incredible. But that's a rare. That's 2 to 3% of cases.
It's so rare.
The vast majority of people who know Alzheimer's disease because their grandparents may have had it, or their, like in our case, our parents have had, some form of dementia. This is a condition for which you have some degree of say, and we don't know everything. We don't have all of the answers. I would never purport to have all the answers, but we do know that by eating and living in a way that fosters metabolic health, which is what we've been talking about since the beginning of this, that you actually can dramatically reduce your risk for developing Alzheimer's disease.
There are so many ways to do that, and it like you said, like the choice and the decision to make the right decision for your brain. Are you familiar with Dr. Daniel Amen?
Yeah. He's a friend and colleague. I've had him on my podcast.
He talks a lot about, you have to ask yourself if what I'm doing right now is going to help or hurt my brain. And he seems very, I had him on my podcast as well. And, he spoke a lot about basically the choices you make. And it's difficult in this society. It's a difficult thing. I feel like a lot of people on one hand are like, well, my dad was this way, my mom was this way, so I'm going to be this way. There's so much power you have within your own being to truly dictate what your health trajectory is going to be. You don't think that you're a victim of what your parents went through or your grandparents. There really is so much information in literature pointing towards the direction of a healthy life based off of your, the ways that you live. Was there anything that you adjusted for your own personal health through the journey of your experience with your mom, with her Lewy Body Dementia and pancreatic cancer as well?
Yeah.
What did you change something?
I would say in terms of my diet, I definitely changed. So I became less reliant on eating grain products and things like that.
Right.
Just really sort of low quality food. I became hyper vigilant in avoiding ultra processed foods to the best of my ability. And, like I'm not, I don't pass judgment on people who consume them. I certainly do still consume them, but I try to moderate my consumption of them. Packaged processed foods that, are shelf stable, comfort foods. We all, love to have comfort foods around, especially during stressful times. And we all know that, the past year, if anything, for all of us has been a stressful time.
So Cheez-Its are bad, Max? You're going to tell me Cheez-Its are bad? You're going to be rude?
I would say they're worth avoiding. But if they're your favorite thing in the world,
they're
then have
my fucking favorite.
Are they? Yeah.
I don't eat packaged shit, but like if I see a bag of Cheez-Its and I'm on the road, I'm like, well, I'm on the road.
Yeah.
The bag looks at me. There's this like thing that happens, and it's a pure love connection, truly. I don't want you to be jealous because I kind of feel like you're getting jealous of the Cheez-It bag, but I'm just letting you know I do love some Cheez-Its.
This is you're just like seducing one another.
I'm just in the aisle at some, gas and go, making eyes at a bag of Cheez-Its. And I know I'm not the only one, okay? And that's where I hear Daniel Amen going, is this good for my brain, yes or no? The answer is so loud, no. I don't know how to just leave it there sometimes.
Well, I mean, the reality is in moderation, a food like that actually would not, like single foods are not necessarily good or bad for the brain. It's about the dietary pattern as a whole. Okay. And that's where I think sometimes, diet culture on social media can be a little bit misleading, like that bag of Cheez-Its. Yeah, it can be very dramatic, right? That bag of Cheez-Its, although, like, it's not the healthiest food in isolation. If that's all that you're eating in terms of a diet that is, in the overall sense, very nutrient dense, and, rich in healthy fats and ample protein and, phytonutrients from whole plants. And then you're eating that bag of Cheez-Its, so we'll just assume that it's a smaller bag. Even if you have that once a day, if that's your one treat, then that's okay. In the context of a diet that's like you're doing everything else right. So I think it's important. Yeah. Exactly.
Not so bad. So I think it's just a bag of Cheez-Its, a bottle of wine, a couple blunts, cheeseburger, and a pizza. That's not so bad, guys. We're doing good.
Now we're pushing it.
Grief eating. Let me have my moment. How did you fall off the wagon during grieving and going through that process? What did you do that was destructive?
Well, so I have this term when I find a bag of something that I really like, which I'm sure you can relate to. I call it whole bagging. Yeah, it's very
whole bagging's something different where I'm from, but yeah, I'm into whole bagging.
That's hilarious.
Oh, you're a whole bagger. Yeah,
you're a whole bagger.
Yeah, that's a real thing.
We'll take Cheetos or Cheez-Its or whatever. For me, it's like I found this brand of no affiliation with them, but there's a brand called Quinn, and they create these pretzels that are like paleo approved, like whatever the marketing is, but they're grain-free pretzels. They're really, really freaking delicious and addictive. And I'll open up the bag and I try to just have like a handful, but that never ends up happening. I end up whole bagging. Just going through the whole. You could also.
Wouldn't it be great? I have a fantasy of you being this like very healthy. You've done TED Talks, you've got your podcast, the Genius Foods, Genius Life. I love this fantasy of you whole bagging in your closet. Like that's your main day is you just shoveling food in your face, and then you go out and you're like, guys, kale. Okay, we have kale.
I walk the walk. I practice what I preach, and that's why I'm not, I'm like not judgmental. There's no dogma in terms of what I practice.
No, you're very realistic.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm human, and I'm, like, I'm not one of these Instagrammers that's like every photo with their shirt off and it's like 12 pack. Like I don't have that, like I'm like doing the best I can.
Look forward to that in 2021 though. Is that something that's in
Maybe. A lot of these Instagrammers that like look jacked all the time, they're injecting things. They're on all kinds of like crazy stuff. And they become obsessed with their food. Like food obsession. I'm not food obsessed. I'm very interested, and I'm passionate about food and nutrition.
Yeah, you're curious. You're food curious.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I'm food curious. Exactly.
Curiosity is what, creates conversation and also pathways to living a healthy life. And I think when you remain curious, you allow yourself to dip your toe in a bag of Cheez-Its or to whole bag a Quinn pretzel in your closet, like whatever it is. I
Yeah.
think having that approach is so, so healthy. So on the other coin, what are some of your favorite swaps? Because I know you talk a lot about healthy swaps, which I love on your page. Like, if you like this, here's a healthier version. But what is Max? What are your favorite swaps?
So I've swapped a lot, much, if not all, of the grain product in my life for vegetables. So like instead of like brown, I used to be big on brown rice. I used to eat brown rice,
Me
almost with
too.
every meal. And instead of that, now I opt for fibrous veggies. So dark leafy greens. I'll try to have a big fatty salad every day. A salad with lots of extra virgin olive oil.
Yeah.
Research actually out of Rush University shows us that people who do this, have a big salad every day, have brains that perform up to 11 years younger. So this is a really
Damn.
sort of, yeah, it's a very
That's a
helpful,
huge number.
yeah, more than a decade
So I'm
on average.
15.
Yeah, mentally,
Excuse
mentally,
me.
but
I
that's
have to
probably
go,
not a
Max. I'm
surprise.
busy.
Probably not a surprise to many of your listeners. I'm kidding, but no, it's very helpful. Very helpful. I
Were you a
think
bread eater? Are you a bread eater?
I was a big bread eater.
Tell me,
Big
what's the
bread.
truth about bread, man?
So
Son of a bitch.
bread is an ultra processed food. It's a, commercial bread is loaded with, it's actually one of the top sources of dietary sodium in the US, bread and rolls. And, I'm not saying that sodium is necessarily a bad thing. It's an important, mineral. But, by and large, Americans consume a ton of it from processed foods. It's also, a very reliable source of processed grains, which, send your blood sugar through the roof typically, and provide very little nutritional value other than the synthetic vitamins and minerals that wheat is usually in the modern world fortified with. But it's not really a high quality food.
Max,
Um,
happiness is quality. Okay, when I eat a whole pizza, I feel so happy.
yeah, it's a little bit of bread here and there. Many people have problems with digesting gluten. I'm
I've
not a
come
big
across that recently.
yeah.
It gives me
So
headaches. It makes me like cloudy. And is that a real thing, or am I imagining that?
Well, it depends on who you ask. So, I mean, there is non-celiac gluten sensitivity. So, celiac is a condition. Celiac disease affects about 2% of the U.S. population. And for people with celiac disease, whenever they consume gluten-containing grains, they mount a violent gastrointestinal attack against this protein that the body senses as being a foreign invader. But no human being can properly digest gluten, which breaks down into two peptides, which are not ever properly assimilated in the body. I've interviewed numerous times one of the leading researchers in this topic, Dr. Alessio Fasano over at Harvard. And some people can manifest purely extraintestinally symptoms to celiac, to gluten sensitivity when they consume gluten. So these are not necessarily symptoms that you're going to be able to perceive with unmistakable certainty like you do a stomach ache. They might
Right.
experience brain fog. They might experience, anxiety and things like that. There's not a ton of research on this, in humans, but it's one of those things that, my own personal view on gluten is that if you're not overtly sensitive to it and you're not celiac, then, I think a little bit here and there is probably totally fine. It's sort of like a dose makes the poison thing. But unfortunately today, so many people have they're eating gluten around the clock at every meal, whether it's sandwiches or wraps or wheat snacks or things like that. So people are eating it around the clock. And sort of on a background of widespread immune dysfunction, because so many of
Right.
us, were spoon-fed antibiotics growing up, were, born
Cereal.
via cereal, not appropriately breastfed, or born via C-section, or, there's any number
Left
of
at a
reasons.
Macy's for a couple hours. I mean, there's a
Left at a
lot of
Macy's for a
things.
couple of hours. Yeah. So sort of in that context, we're seeing gluten, which is a protein that can, in a certain certain type of person, instigate, autoimmunity or sort of immune confusion, in this context of widespread immune dysfunction. So for me, I think that it's one of these things that you're probably worth, minimizing in your diet. I personally avoid it, and I'm not celiac.
And what about, okay, that's fair, minimizing it. What about bread? Like, I'm from upstate New York. Syracuse, New York is where I'm from, and it's where I'm currently at for the holidays. There's a bakery called Columbus Bakery, owned by a bunch of Greeks. It's Italian bread that they make. It is the greatest. When I say the greatest bread, I'm not being like regionally specific and being like, this is my town, or it's my fucking bread, or you guys, it's the best. I'm telling you, it is the greatest bread, and they don't use any preservatives because the bread goes bad in like a day. Like, it's hard as a rock in like 2 days. Is that like a healthier bread, or is it still fucking gluten?
Well, I think sourdough is a decent, alternative for people that still want to have their cake and eat it too.
Right.
A lot of people anecdotally will report that when they're in Europe, if they do have symptoms associated with gluten sensitivity in the U.S., they tend to not experience those symptoms when they're in
I've
Europe.
heard that, especially in Italy, because it's all bread there.
Yeah, I do eat like breads with more nutrient dense flours. So there's a bakery that I've become sort of friendly with. I have no commercial affiliation with them, no financial affiliation with them, but they're called Misfits Bakehouse. They're at misfits.kitchen, and they make all kinds of grain-free bread
Like
products.
Misfits in Santa Monica?
They are, I don't know, I'm not familiar with the Misfits in Santa
Okay, because
Monica.
there's a delicious restaurant in Santa Monica called Misfit. It's so good.
I do know that. Yes, I
Yep.
do. Yeah. No relation to them. It's called Misfits Bakehouse, and they make like focaccia, they make baklava, they make all kinds of like really delicious things.
With like what? What is that? What is like the healthy?
Sorghum. Yeah, sorghum is like they use a combination. They use almond flour and coconut flour. So almonds are, very nutrient dense. Nuts, obviously, rich in magnesium, fiber, vitamin E. So, I'm a huge fan of almonds, actually. I consider them to be like a genius food. And
I love
so
almonds.
their breads, their breads are made of almonds.
I whole bag
you
nuts.
whole bag almonds. Yeah. You whole bag nuts. Wow. This conversation's going south real fast.
Sorry. You're going to be such a
it,
delight for my listeners. They're used to my mouth.
I like it. It's amazing.
And I mean food. I'm talking about almonds.
Of course. We love nuts. We love them.
I just know this is going to be the clip that my assistant cuts. It's just going to be you and I talking about whole bag of nuts.
Whole bag of nuts, but nuts are good for you. They're genius food. They're good for your brain. They, consumption of nuts related to reduced early mortality, a reduced risk for a number of different conditions. Heart disease being, one of the most familiar. So yeah, have at it. Have at your
What
nuts.
are some?
Go
what
to town.
What would you say are, for listeners, we were talking about supplements earlier. What are a few supplements they should take every day? And is it a male versus female thing, or just maybe for everybody? What is something everybody can take every day?
Well, it's a difficult question to answer without knowing the individual, because it's, I don't really prescribe to a one size fits all approach, but I would say generally, when looking statistically, most people would benefit from, a vitamin D3 supplement these days. Many people are deficient in vitamin D. I believe it's something like 3/4 of the population. Has inadequate levels or insufficient levels of vitamin D. Magnesium is something that I think is pretty important. Magnesium is a mineral that is required for hundreds of enzymatic processes in the body that range from creating energy to DNA repair.
Which is huge for like maintaining a youthful, not just appearance, but, talking
everything.
About like maintaining like a healthy brain.
Oh, everything. DNA damage, like just an insidious accumulation of DNA damage is one of the, theories as to why we age and become decrepit and ultimately die. So,
like aging is a disease.
Yeah. So, I think magnesium is actually one of the most anti-aging supplements that a person can take.
Really? I wouldn't have, well, I don't know, because this is your field of expertise. I wouldn't have known that magnesium is an anti-aging supplement, so that's good to know. I'm literally going to
Yeah.
shoot it into my arm tonight.
I personally, I mean, I eat a pretty nutrient-rich diet, and magnesium is one of the supplements that I take regularly. So I take a good magnesium glycinate, and I take
Okay,
that every
let's
day.
do that. So what does Max take? You take a magnesium glycinate.
So I take magnesium glycinate. I take fish oil pretty regularly every day. I take what else?
Glutathione? Did I
I
say it
don't take
right?
glutathione. No, because your own body makes it. So
That's right. You don't need to fucking take it. It's gangster. It's
as
already
long as
there.
you're eating foods like dark leafy greens, grass-fed beef, eggs, things like that, you're giving your body all of the um, like raw materials that it requires to create glutathione, which again is this master detoxifier. So that's why foods like cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, and then grass-fed beef, eggs, things like that, they're all foods that I would consider to be detoxifying foods, not because they actually detoxify you, but because they basically give your body the raw materials that it requires to create its own detox compounds, while also like stimulating them as well, like which is
Right.
the case for like cruciferous vegetables and things like that.
I've started to think of eating. Now, I love to eat healthy. I joke about Cheez-Its and everything, but I eat, like you were saying, higher quality things. I've learned to swap out the lower quality stuff for higher quality things. But I also believe in your body sort of kind of speaking to you about what you need. But I've also thought about how food essentially, correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe it's just an opinion, food is it's like a communication system for your body. It's
Hmm.
information. It's delivering information to your body. Like all of these nutrients are telling your body where it needs to implement it, and if there's an ailment that specific nutrient is needed, it'll deliver it to that specific area. Isn't that sort of like how our bodies work? Like our bodies are pretty fucking smart. We're the ones that fuck it up.
Oh,
We're
a
the ones that like
1,000%.
interrupt the system.
Yeah, 100%. That's why when it comes to like dietary fats and oils, I have this saying that I like to use that nature doesn't create unhealthy fats, people do. Nature
Yes.
doesn't really create unhealthy foods, people do, you know.
Right.
So if you take a natural food, found around the perimeter of your supermarket, which is where all the natural, and I use air quotes for natural, because it's not that I'm
Companies
like
use that
saying,
word to get you to buy it, and it's like natural
yeah,
flavors. You're like, that could be 1,000 chemicals right there in that one little
yeah.
drop.
I mean, yeah, everything's a chemical, but at the end of the day, like the perishable fresh foods that are that usually are to be found around the perimeter of a supermarket, those are the best for you. And people like to argue about, oh, saturated fat's unhealthy, dietary cholesterol is unhealthy. If they're found in foods like grass-fed beef or eggs, which are eggs, for example, one of nature's multivitamins.
Yep.
We don't need to
My
worry
Aunt
about those.
Betsy grows her own. She has her own chicken. She just brought eggs over. Eggs. This is my Aunt Betsy. Listen, if you have an uncle who's available, she's single. She brought over eggs, honey, because she has bees. She makes her own kombucha and her own fire cider.
Sounds like a keeper.
Yeah, she's a keeper.
That's
So if you have like a hippie uncle who's looking for a
hippie
little bit of
uncle.
fun, Aunt Betsy's available. Sorry, Aunt
And
Betsy, I love you.
Betsy.
She's the
That's good to
best.
know. Very good to know. I'll keep her in mind on Betsy. But generally, then you look at man-made creations like what are in the aisles of the supermarkets. All the packaged processed foods, all the fake, industrially refined oils like canola oil, corn oil, grapeseed oil. Those are worth avoiding because
Those are all
they're
trash. Corn,
all
grapeseed.
trash. Grapeseed, soybean oil, vegetable oil, which is usually just soybean oil.
Do you know how many
You want to
people are
avoid those.
pouring this over their food?
Oh yeah,
Absolutely pouring
it's
it
the
over the
worst.
food. So what are the oils you recommend? Coconut? Extra virgin?
I don't actually recommend coconut oil. I recommend because coconut oil is one of these oils that, um, depending on genes, so this is where sort of genes come into play. Coconut oil is one of these tropical fats that only a very specific genetic background may have evolved, having exposure to over a multi-generational period. So, I think some people do really well when consuming lots of coconut oil, but generally that's not a kind of oil that I would recommend publicly that people should start, adding into their diet.
That's an
Um,
interesting. That's smart because if you're not, and if your ancestors were eating it, that's one thing. But if you yourself didn't grow up in that environment, you might not have the physiological
yeah,
tools to process
yeah,
that.
Yeah, you might over respond to that quantity of saturated fat and
Right.
see sort of an aberration in your lipid profile, for example, which, I'm not one of these like, oh my God, we have to be afraid of, LDL cholesterol or anything like that. But, if if a specific food is causing a dramatic change in your lipids, then that's worth paying attention to.
Yeah.
And so, on the other hand, extra virgin olive oil, and close second place would be avocado oil. These are fats that I think the vast majority of people can actually include, and should include in their diets, and see an improvement in things, in both the way their brains function, in their lipid profile, in their metabolic health. So that's why, like, I'm very bullish on extra virgin olive oil. I think most people should actually get rid of all the crap oils in their kitchens and bring on
Damn.
like a really good extra virgin olive oil and use that as the primary oil in their
Solely.
cooking, as a sauce on their food, as a dressing. Extra virgin olive oil really is almost like medicinal in terms of its health benefits.
Look at Max Lugavere dropping some oil knowledge on this podcast. Y'all get rid of your shit oil. Okay, get rid of your Crisco, your stupid vegetable oil that, well, let's be real, can literally run a car. Your old Toyota Corolla from 1980 in your garage is gonna power up with that shitty ass oil.
1,000%. I wish I could say it as bluntly as you, but I would probably get.
That's my charm, my blunt approach to how I speak. Now, before we go, I do want to ask a couple of things. One, is there a way to eat to sort of help the process of grief be a little bit healthier? Is there, because for me, I'll speak personally. I don't really have like a sweet tooth, but during this, this month, but this is the 6th week that my mom's been gone, I find myself wanting sweets and craving sweets, and I've never really been like that before, and also wanting tequila every night. How do you balance that? Like, is there a way to eat healthy through this grieving process, or are there concessions to be made?
I think that you have to be ultimately kind to yourself, and to be gentle with the language that you use towards yourself, and to realize that you're going through a period which will pass, but to not try to take shortcuts through the grief.
Right.
Grief is one of those things where the only way out is through, unfortunately.
Yeah, you got to feel it to heal it.
You got to feel it to heal it, and we're all going to reach for food that comfort us during that time, and that's okay. I have a friend. Her name is Taryn. And she had breast cancer recently, and she put something on her social media that was, I think, a really great way to phrase it. You should talk to yourself like you would talk to a child. As kind and as lovingly and as warmly as you would talk to a 12-year-old. Like imagine trying to teach a 12-year-old something. You wouldn't, and they make a mistake. You wouldn't scold them.
No.
When we make mistakes, we tend to scold ourselves. We tend to feel
we're so
guilt
hard on
about
ourselves. Yeah.
We're so hard on ourselves, but I think all the time, most of us, all of us, would be very well suited to start talking to ourselves more as the children we are within, that we all still are, even though our exteriors get older. So to be kind to yourself, and being kind to yourself sometimes means, not overindulging,
Right.
Getting to the exercise, continue to do the things that, make you feel good and are going to be good decisions for you in the long term, so to keep the long term, even when you're going through this grief and you feel like you can't even get out of bed sometimes, to keep your eye on the long-term prize, to know that you're going to get through this, and that ultimately you're going to want to be and feel healthy, and to not go through, to do what you can to maybe be a little bit better off, like than your loved one, somehow,
Yeah.
if we have any control over the kinds of conditions that we're talking about, depending on what condition it is.
It is important to realize that grieving is a healing process, and that through this process, self-care is vital. And like you, I work out every day and journal and meditate and all of those things. So, I used to be a little bit of a drinker, not anymore, but then this process of I have a couple tequilas at night. I'm not getting sloshed drunk, but even a couple tequilas for me is like a lot. But I haven't felt guilty about it. I have I think a pretty healthy outlook. I know a lot of people struggle with guilt and talking to themselves in a negative way. So I think that's a really important statement that people need to hear, is to be kind to yourself and to talk to yourself like you were talking to a child, because we all still are a child. Our vessel has aged a bit,
Mm-hmm.
What would you say before I let you go and whole bag it? What would you say grief has taught you? What was the greatest lesson you learned through grieving?
I mean, at risk of sounding cliche, that time really is the only, you really like, time heals all things. And, the pain gets, it's always going to be there. You're always going to, experience like little moments that kind of like poke at the sensitivity, and remind you of what that loss, felt like at the very beginning. At the very beginning, it's just everything is so sensitive and painful and raw and real. But over time, I think it gets better. And time is really the only thing that can do that. You just kind of have to continue to treat yourself well and to allow yourself to experience, every feeling that you feel is valid. At
That's
any given
really
time.
important.
Yeah.
Every feeling you feel is valid. That's such an important statement for people to hear.
Yeah. Every feeling that you feel at any time is valid. Right. And we should acknowledge those feelings and allow ourselves to feel them, as opposed to, trying to numb them, with whatever it may be, food or alcohol or drugs or pharmaceuticals or, even
big fat blunts. right on the windowsill, because I'm the aunt and I have to put it up high so the kids can't get it. I'm looking at the joint. It's up on the windowsill.
Oh man.
Now,
yeah.
What last thing I want to ask you? What's a word of advice for people dealing with someone they love who has a form of dementia, Alzheimer's, Lewy bodies, Parkinson's? What's a word of advice for people going through that process?
Show as much love as you can to both your loved one as well as yourself. Try to, do what you can to, to do your own research, to inform yourself, to arm yourself with knowledge, and then to teach that knowledge, but to teach gently. That's something that I learned with my mom when I started doing, all this research into diet and brain health. I felt very compelled, to try to uproot everything in my mom's life and to put her on the Max diet, before I had written my books, and to do whatever I could to try to get her to adhere to, my version of what I had ascertained to be the brain healthiest diet, and I would certainly do that for myself, but ultimately people live the way that they want to live, and they should be free to live the way that they want to live. And you don't want your your perspective on how another person should live to interfere with the relationship that you have with that person. For example, if you take away from this podcast that you shouldn't be drinking orange juice, and you have a loved one with some kind of dementia and you see them drinking orange juice, you don't want to get mad at them for drinking orange juice. You don't want to scold them. You don't want them to feel guilt or shame when they choose to enjoy a cup of orange juice when quality of life generally for somebody with dementia becomes so diminished. So to kind of, to take all this information and to arm yourself with as much information as possible, but to not become like a zealot about it,
Yes.
To not let it affect your relationship, and ultimately to teach, as best you can, but to do it gently and to acknowledge, to know that People are going to live the way that they want to live, and that's fine. You just kind of have to let them.
Well, if you guys, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, you change your own life, do what you want, with your own life. But when it comes to like with other people, that's something that I learned with my mom early on. Like I would try to keep the cookies and the things like that I know that would bring my mom joy out of her house for a little while, and I realized that wasn't the best way to do it. My mom would have the cookie; she would end up having the cookie, and she would feel like there was a period where she felt like a very small window where she felt like, she needed to like hide it from me. And then when I saw that, I realized, okay, I don't want my mom hiding anything from me, or feeling guilt or shame about anything that she wants to do. So I completely backed off, took my foot off the gas. And that was a profound learning experience for me,
Yeah, to sort of, try and find a balance between taking care of yourself and taking care of them while not going crazy in the process.
Exactly.
It's definitely a balance, and there's no perfect way to do it. But you guys, I encourage you, I implore you to please check out Max's page. It's endless information and entertaining, and he's going to have shirtless posts in 2021, which he promised here on this podcast. That's it's legally binding. Check out his book, Genius Foods, also The Genius Life. And what else would you like to promote? Anything? Tell my listeners where they can find you, where they can eat you up, Max.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, my Instagram at Max Lugavere, Lugavere, and then I have, if you like listening to podcasts, which I'm assuming you do, I have my own podcast. It's also called The Genius Life. So check that out.
And it's Lugavere, please.
Lugavere, yes. Okay, Lugavere.
Thank you so much. No, honestly, thank you so much for your information and sharing. Who's there? Okay, wait 1 second. This is perfect timing, Max. Hold on. Hold on. Okay, come here. Come on. Okay, you want to say hi? Okay, hold on.
Oh man, what a cute kid.
Okay. This is my nephew, Elliot. It's a little chaotic. Sit down. Okay.
How you doing?
Can you hear him?
Hello?
Let me get my microphone. Are you sitting? You want to sit in my lap? Come say hi real quick. Can you hear him in your ear? Yeah. I could do this the easy way. Here you go.
Wow, you guys are so cute. What are your names? What's your name?
Elliot.
What's your name?
Creamer.
What's your favorite thing to eat?
Ice cream.
I love ice cream.
What about you? What's your favorite thing to eat?
Can we take this on mac and cheese.
Also my two favorite things to eat. I'm going to finish the podcast. Do you want to say goodbye?
Bye.
You want to say goodbye?
Bye.
It's pure chaos here.
Dog barking.
Bunny, chill out. Thank you. I love you. This is my other dog. I have 3 dogs and a niece and a nephew here.
Oh my God.
It's definitely helped me through this whole process to have, the craziness and the family and the chaos. But
that's great.
I do want to thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to promote before we go?
No, that's it. Like if you love to read books, my book Genius Foods is a nutritional care manual for the brain. New York Times bestseller. Very grateful. All around the world, it's used. It's prescribed to patients. Like, it'll give you a master's level education in nutrition. So check that out. And then my podcast, The Genius Life. Yeah.
We gotta check it out, you guys. Make sure you subscribe, you listen, you buy. I'll put all the links for his book, his podcast in the description of this episode. I'm almost done, sweetie. Thank you so much, Max. I appreciate you, your information, your vulnerability, your whole bag and style. It's very, very inspirational. So thank you so much for being a part of this.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.